Well, hello. Now, it's been a long time since I've done what my YouTube friend in Church House Classics says is beer and bollocks. Well, this is going to be a gin and groans because I'm drinking gin as opposed to wine and wines. There are a number of things that have crossed my mind and I like to express my opinion on them. I won't get into the Democrat-Republican thing because you all know I'm a Donald Trump fan and the Democrats are a bunch of assholes. So I won't get into that. What I will do is try and talk mainly about cars and things that go on with them. Now, as I mentioned, my YouTube friend, God, what's his name? Richard, I can't think of his last name. I guess it really doesn't matter. Church House Classics. Hudson. The brain cell does work. He did a Triumph Stag, it was the other day. And he mentioned something which is very important, and particularly for any person in America, well, maybe in the UK as well and other parts. But anyway, let's stick with America for the moment, but it may be relevant to you wherever you live. And yes, I'm over to one side because I want you at least to have a decent thing to look at. Fuses. Now, the American spec fuse is different to the English spec fuse. The American one will go full load, whereas the English one will blow. I will give you a link to how the ratings differ. And I'm going to say something now which is not totally accurate, but it's to make the point. If you put a 35 amp American fuse in a British car, or maybe even some European cars, I don't know, but you may need to check that out. That is like putting a 90 amp fuse in. And as Richard rightly says, and I've seen it, you might as well put a nail in there. Because the first thing that's going to give out is not the fuse, it's your car wiring. That means your car will catch fire. No good, huh? Your classic on fire? You may recall I had a similar issue. Yeah, I did on my Mark II. At the time, I had the standard 2 fuse block. I think one was 35 and one was 50. Now, I can't put hand on heart and say they were Lucas fuses in there. In fact, I would probably guess, as I live in America and have done for 30 years, that they were American fuses. And no wonder the wire burnt and the fuse didn't blow, which it should have done. And that's exactly what happened on the Stag that Richard Hudson did on his channel, and I will put a link to his channel and that particular episode in the description. And I would strongly suggest you read it, you watch it. He goes into much more detail than I'm going to about fuses and their rating, etc. And there is also a link, and I'm going to try and find it and put that in the description, that shows how Lucas, for argument's sake, it doesn't have to be Lucas, but English fuses in the car differ from American fuses. Let me see if I can grab some fuses and show you. I don't know if I can, so don't go away. Right, I'm going to try and show you some fuses, and because of the way this camera works, it may not work. In my hand is a red 2 amp fuse. You see that? It's got a little thin wire. Okay. Now here is a Oh, it's a 1 amp fuse. Again, look at that, just a little thin wire. Okay. Now here's a 15 amp fuse. Hang on, come on. 15 amp fuse. And if I turn it over, you can see upside down it says 15 amp. Now, most of these, I want to say, are probably English fuses. Now, let me show you an American fuse. Now, granted, it's a 30 amp fuse, so it's bigger. You know, that's a fair comment, it's a bigger fuse. However, look at that. That is a thick bar of metal. That will not blow at 30 amps. That will keep going to, I don't know, 70, 80, 90, whatever it feels like. They call them safety valve. But it does say, made in the good old US of A in St. Louis. So do be very careful. Now there is another type of fuse. And look at that one. Now, I'm not sure what vehicle that is from. I think it was from a German vehicle, but I could be wrong. I don't know, it's one of those ones I've picked up along the way. And that is a 25 amp fuse. I guarantee that that wouldn't blow at 25 amps. Yep. So, do watch Richard's video. He explains it much better than me, goes into much more detail. And as I said, I will try and find the chart and capture it and put it on the screen. Okay, 1 second. Now, another thing to move on from with that fuse rating, which again you will see in Richard's video, and I'm sorry I keep quoting it, but it's a fucking good video and the information is important. The wire that had been used that burnt out on this Triumph Stag looked like speaker wire, household speaker wire. That is a totally different rating to anything in a car. Now, in this particular case, I think it saved the car from being burnt to the ground because the wire burnt out before the fuse. And the wire it was connected to, because there was a joint in it, was stronger, and it just let the weak wire burn out. Oh, I'm sorry. So be aware of that. I unfortunately have had probably 2 fires because of electrical wiring. One was in a Cortina Mark 1 that I had, and the other one you saw in my previous videos. It was a Cortina Mark 1, and someone had put a wire through a metal hole without a grommet, and it shorted out and burnt from the horn right the way up the steering column and filled the car full of acrid smoke. That was also not fun to drive in. Again, the reason that the one in Richard's video had a problem is because the wires came out through the side of the gear lever, designed that way, I hasten to add, and with the gear lever going backwards and forwards, it chafed through the wires and caused them to short. Not good. Okay, let's move on from fuses and wires. In one of my previous videos, sorry, I mentioned testing. I've got to stop doing that. I'm sorry. Next year we know I'll be saying basically. Only morons use the word basically. God. Now, in a previous video I mentioned that various testing, when you're testing your car for the local authority, etc. And somebody sent me, and I'll put their name at the bottom, an information on the MOT test in England, the basics that it has to go through. Believe me, it's stringent. Oh, and also so is the driving test in England. Now, it's been 30 years since I took a driving test in England. Well, hell, it's been a lot more than 30 years. When did I last take my test in England? Last. It was the only time. I was probably, let's be generous, it was 54 years ago at least. Probably more than that, but let's not go into that. And the test then was quite stringent, but nowhere near as stringent as it is these days. When I took it, you had to know the highway code inside out. Stopping distances, what signs meant, etc. And obviously you had to be able to drive, you had to be able to reverse, you had to be able to park in reverse, go back up into a parking space, etc. When I took my test over here in Pennsylvania, sorry, I'm in Arizona now. When I took my test in Pennsylvania, they got in the car with me after I'd taken a computer test in the test center, of which there were 21 questions, and I was answering them, and I'd got to 18, and it said, "You've answered enough," and said, "That's it, well done, you've passed this part." Anyway, with the driving, I got in the car, they got in the car, I backed it out of the parking space, I drove around behind the test centre where there were some cones, I stopped at a row of cones, I then drove over to another row of cones and stopped between them. I then drove around the other side of the test centre, came up to a stop sign where the tester said, "Don't forget to stop at the stop sign." Well, surely that should have been part of the test. And that was it. I then parked in front of the test station and they said, "Here's your license." Not sure how it is in other states. That was Pennsylvania. When I came to Arizona to take the test, I had to look into a machine, test my eyes, and that was it. Nothing more. Right. What can I move on to? Tools. Now, I watch a lot of car videos, people fixing cars. And even these guys that run channels specifically to earn a living, I don't understand why they don't have the correct or decent equipment. There's two guys that spring to mind, both of which I think are nice guys. One is not economically viable. Fortunately, he's just bought himself a workshop, but for some reason he doesn't always use it. The other one is Tasty Classics. Now, Tasty Classics has a habit of going out to places and picking up vehicles. He never seems to have the right tools with him. And by that I mean he doesn't have a decent jack, he doesn't have these wheel dolly trolleys, and most of the cars he picks up have got flat tyres and he's hoping to pump them up. He doesn't even have a portable, well, what I would call a decent portable air compressor. He has a little electric thing, which assumes there's electric. He has a bloody great big Chevy truck that he could put all of this equipment into with a tow bar, or he could put it in his Land Rover or whatever other vehicle. Doesn't matter what vehicle. But when you're doing that and it is in effect your profession, I do not understand why you would buy one of these cheap ass jacks and cheap ass stands, jack stands, axle stands, whatever you want to call them. They're crap, they're dangerous. They've normally got diddy little wheels on which don't push very well on anything, even on flat concrete. I just don't understand why these people that are doing this for money and YouTube entertainment don't have the brains to go and buy some decent equipment. If it was me doing it, I would have a portable petrol compressor so that I could pump up tyres or do whatever I need to do to get the vehicle out, like getting the wheels off or whatever, and decent trolleys, dollies, whatever you want to call them. so that you can move vehicles, even if it's on gravel. If you have ones with decent sized wheels, then you should be okay even on gravel. And they'll use this cheap ass piddly pot jack that I wouldn't go anywhere near because I value my life. And then you need some decent jack stands or axle stands. Okay, enough of a rant on that. Same thing, spanners. Why go buy cheap spanners? Buy decent, expensive ones. Snap-on, Mac, whoever, but decent ones so that they fit the job they're going to do. And if there's a problem with them, you can get some replacements for free. Yes, it may be a huge investment or a larger investment up front, but it's worth it. The same applies to rental tools. Don't go for buy the cheap shit. Go to your local AutoZone, O'Reilly's, Napa, whoever, and rent the tool. Their tools are designed to last because they rent them. They don't want them to break. They're there for a reason, and they normally don't cost you a dime. Now, I don't know if that applies in England with Halley Fords. Probably doesn't, because that would be a decent thing to do, and Halfords, from what I see, don't do very much decent stuff. All right, that's really enough of my kind of ranting for the moment. I can't think of anything else I want to blab about, but I'm sure there's tons. Oh, I know. I'm going to finish this one up with please like, comment, subscribe. There's a reason for that. I was watching James May, who I admire. I do like him. I will watch him talk about paint drying. I think he's a very entertaining person. However, he was being questioned by lesbian Lucy, and she asked him a question about I don't know, there's a name for this. Please like, comment, subscribe. There's a name for that piece. And he said, I don't like doing it because it's begging, it's needy. Well, Mr. James May, we are not all rich like you. So we do say, please like, comment, subscribe. Because for those of us, me, that monetize our videos, it gives us a few dollars. Not much. I mean, I'm not like, as I said, Tasty Classics or not economically viable or a lot of those people. I'm not doing it as a business. I'm doing this for fun and because I enjoy it. And probably every 2 months, I'll get $100 out of all the videos I do. Now, of course, the more people like, the more people comment, the more people subscribe, then actually they can also dislike, it doesn't matter. That bangs the algorithms, that makes the advertisers happy. Yes, and I know advertising is annoying, but it makes them happy, and I'll get like a penny out of each advert. And eventually it mounds up and I get $100 and I go, wow, and I'll put that towards perhaps some camera equipment, such as I'm using at the moment. It's a magnetic camera holder. And you get filters and you get tripods, lights, stuff like that. So for us poor people, James May, it's worthwhile. Okay, now please do like, comment, subscribe, and get out in that garage and go and do some shit. Bye.